Hi, I'm Tom Chick. It is March 24th, 2020. I'm here with Calendar Bear to help me keep track of the day. We're here at my dining room table. We're about to go look at Deep Madness, a Kickstartered dungeon crawler with a horror theme that I really like. And I don't even like dungeon crawlers. So what I'm going to try to do today is, and I don't imagine I'm going to succeed, but I want to show you which monsters, this sounds so goofy, are in play during this playthrough. Because what you do with Deep Madness, one of the things that I like about it is, you know what, I'm not going to explain up here. Let's come over here and I'll show you. Do you like this, by the way? How's that for production values? You know, as a little backlit, so I thought I'll hang this up and oh boy, I don't even know why this is in the house. At any rate, let's go to the dining room table and I'll show you a little bit of what I'm talking about. I hope to be done in 10 minutes. Well, we'll see if I can do that. Okay, here we go. All right, as I started to mention before, my goal here, and I don't expect I'll succeed, is to very briefly, without getting too deep into the weeds, give you an overview of what the monsters in this session of Deep Madness do in terms of the gameplay. One of the really cool things about this game is you've got 20 or so of these creature cards, and all the different creatures have different stats, different behaviors, they do different things, they interact with the game's systems in different ways, and you deal out 6 of them. You don't know what 6 you're going to get. Each one, and in combination, the different ones have an effect on how the scenario unfolds. Now, they're the basics of the scenario. That is consistent from game to game, but what these guys do, and also, of course, what your character powers do, there's about 20 of those as well, those combinatorials decide how the game plays. So what I want to show you is which 6 monsters I've dealt for this scenario and how they affect the gameplay. So I'll begin by showing you the specifics of the scenario itself. Again, I don't want to get too deep into the weeds, so I might pull myself back. We're going to try to get this in under 10 minutes. I doubt that'll happen. So here's the overall board in this scenario. This scenario is about this thing right here. He's an unkillable boss. He chases your dudes around the board, and you win by killing this unkillable boss, which involves, in this map, over here there's a control room, here there's a control room, and up here there's a control room. Each one of them, you interact with these pieces to, all right, bit of backstory. This unkillable boss is the manifestation of the consciousness of test subjects. And that's what's in each of these control rooms, a test subject. And you have to unplug each of the 3 test subjects to make the boss monster go poof, and then you've won the scenario. Now, that's going to be consistent every time you play this scenario in Deep Madness. What will vary, and what will have a huge impact on the gameplay, is which 6 monsters you have drawn. In this case, here are the 6 guys that I've drawn, and I want to tell you briefly what each one of them does. I also want to point out, too, I think Deep Madness has done a really good job of matching the artwork and the sculpt in the miniature. That always bothers me in a miniatures-based game where it's not easy to relate the artwork and the miniature. So let's start with this thing here. It's called a Despair, and you'll note there's the sculpt. Let's see if I can... It's just a hand reaching out from a mass of primordial goo. And all that a Despair does is keeps you from moving out of that spot. So for instance, if we look here in this control room, this is Elizabeth, she's here with a Despair. She cannot make this move. It is impossible until she destroys this thing. Furthermore, on its turn, when it activates, a Despair adds to a nearby space this token, which is basically another despair. This won't spawn more of them, but each activation, each time this guy takes a turn, he spreads out this mass of killer seaweed that you can't leave the space until you attack it. And attacking it, you do 1 point of damage and it's gone. It basically burns an action. So in a scenario where you have to run from this unkillable boss, these seaweeds right here are a huge liability. You know, if there were seaweed here, these guys would be toast trying to run from him. So Despair is one of the 6 monsters. Another one I've got here is Twisted. Here, for instance, is one of them. The Twisted, and again, just to show you these lovely sculpts. That's actually pretty neat. I mean, you know, how much can you do with a bunch of tentacles? I feel like the Deep Madness folks have gotten the most they can out of a bunch of tentacles. What the Twisted do is they play into the game's madness system. Now, each character, for instance, here's H.P. Lovecraft. Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry. Ward Phillips has a sanity rating, and that sanity rating represents how much physical exertion they can apply to do various things like use their powers and re-roll dice. However, the more of that physical exertion they've actually used, the more prone they are to madness. And this is represented by when you exert yourself, you put out this little token, and when you're subject to madness, if you have none of these tokens, no big deal. You're fine. Madness doesn't apply to you. But if you have psychically, I'm sorry, I said physically, it's a psychic exertion, mental exertion. If you have mentally exerted yourself, then a madness causes you to flip this over to its madness side. And anytime you get 3 of these, you have to draw one of these madness cards, which will have some sort of an unpredictable debuff, or it'll apply a penalty of some sort. So what the Twisted do, these fellows here, is like most of the monsters, pretty much all of these monsters, is that right? Yeah, they all move 1 space on their turn, and they all tend to have about 4 hit points. They all do 2 points of damage. That's consistent. Just in terms of the combat model, these guys do pretty much the same thing. Like this guy's got more hit points, but less resistance. He's got no armor. But for the most part, 2 points of damage, 4 hit points. The Despair doesn't count. He doesn't figure into the actual combat. But then their special ability, in the case of the Twisted, is figuring into the madness system, where you roll this die, and if you get an eyeball, there are on this 12-sided dice, 3 eyeballs. No. Yeah, 3 eyeballs. If you roll and you get an eyeball, where's one? There you go. Then you have to take a madness token, meaning you just plop one of these down, and as you get 3 of them, they get removed and you draw a madness card. Now, one of the combinatorial things that's going on is because I have Ward Phillips, not H.P. Lovecraft, in play, he allows me to draw multiple madness cards and choose the one I want to apply. So in this situation, this madness, which might normally be a huge pain in the butt because I'm going to get stuck with these unpredictable madness cards, in this situation, this guy is defanged a little bit because of the presence of Ward Phillips. And that's just a tactical context for the monsters that I've dealt out. Let's look at the Immortal. And this is actually a pretty cool mini here. If I were into minis, I might display this one prominently. It's like an elder thing, like the things you'd find in Antarctica. So this fella here in Immortal, and here the naming is very much on the nose, which is fine by me. What he does is he takes these tokens here and he applies them if he's in the same space as another creature, another monster. He applies this token to the monster, and this guy actually already has one. And what that means is when this monster dies, instead of dying, it removes this token and completely recovers all of its hit points. It has been resurrected. Furthermore, when you kill these guys, They're herding right here. They're flocking. When you kill these guys, you put one of these tokens on its space, and then every time these guys activate, if there's a token lying in the space, you add another one. So for instance, in this control room over here, where Lizbeth is stuck with this despair seaweed, you'll note there are 2 of these. The moment that a third token gets placed down, it immediately spawns a new Immortal. So once these guys are on the board, they tend to stay on the board. You can kill them, but they're going to come back because they are Immortal. Up next, a Purge. And this guy looks like he's about the most vanilla monster in Deep Rising. He's just a soldier. Oh, look at that arm. I'm just now noticing that. He's got a mutant-like killer claw arm. Oh, a Purge has a couple of things going for it. You can see we've got some of them over here. One of the main things that has going for it is most creatures don't have any range. If I am, where's an example? Well, right here. Ward Phillips is standing 1 space away from a monster. Generally, the monster has to move into a space to attack him. The Purge, I guess because they were soldiers, as you can clearly see, they've got big old guns. The Purge have a range of 3. And on this map, which is going to look like a lot of noise, but trust me, this gets intuitive. Like there's a lot of this artwork in the background that you just kind of tune out and you learn to focus on specific tokens or whatever. So in this situation, I can clearly see, even though it might look like a bunch of noise to you, that this guy right here, he's got a line of sight way up to here. Anyone standing here can be attacked by this guy. Now, there's a whole system of closed and locked hatches in this game that can interrupt line of sight, and the Purge can be manipulated that way. For instance, if I close this door, everyone here is safe. Now, this guy can try to break through the door, and he will, but the Purge have a super long line of sight. And they also have, and I think this is probably why they're called the Purge, they come with these tokens. And whenever you take a point of damage from a Purge, you roll the 12-sided die, and if you get a scratch effect, and I think, what is it? There are 5 scratches on this 12-sided die. The Purge's attack causes you to take a Purge token. What does a Purge token do? Each character can have 4 inventory items. No more than 4. You can't have 5. You can have 3, but you can have 4 maximum. If you draw a 5th, that's fine. You're going to have to discard 1. Every Purge token means you can carry 1 fewer inventory item. So the Purge basically purge your inventory. Coming back over here to Ward Phillips, he's got 4 inventory items. If this Purge were to damage him and he were to then roll a scratch icon on this D12, which is a 5 out of 12 chance of doing that, he would be purged of one of these inventory items, and he would furthermore only be able to carry 3. Now, how do you get rid of these Purge tokens? You don't. You're stuck with them. Which leads me to something else I want to show you real quick. Here's the D12. It's used to resolve a bunch of these monster special abilities. Normally, Deep Madness uses these D6s, which are just regular D6s. There's no special distribution. Using these sanity points here, the main way you will use them for this mental or psychic exertion is anytime you want, you can use one of them to re-roll a D6. And it gives you a fair bit of flexibility. It lets you mitigate the randomness a fair bit, especially for someone with a high rating like Lovecraft. Most people have a 3. There's a 3. Oh, we've got a bunch of 4s here. We've got a 5. Never mind. Trust me, most people have a 3. What you cannot do with the sanity rating is manipulate this die. This die here, it's out of your control. Now I say that, but there is an inventory item in this game called a weird statue. And if you have the weird statue, you can manipulate the D12. Let's look over here now to one of the guys I hate the most, the Blind. And he's just basically a muscular dude with a tentacle on it instead of a head. I think he's like those deep sea fish that have that lure that they hold in front of their mouth. That seems to be the idea, although he doesn't have a mouth. What the blind does, and let me show you a blind. Here's a blind right over here. We've got a couple of them here. What they do is, if after it has moved and tried to attack you, it can only attack you if you're in its space. If you can see it, if you are in its line of sight, you must take and there's no roll here, it just happens, a weakness token. For instance, you'll note Emma Kruger has a weakness token. You can only have one of them. A weakness token means your next attack is a whiff. So in this situation, if Emma Kruger were to attack this twisted, which she might want to do if she weren't about to beat feet away from this guy, her first attack, in every character you get 3 actions on your turn. She could theoretically attack him 3 times. Her first attack would be ineffectual and would instead remove this token. The flip side of these tokens negates your first move. One of the sides shows your legs wrapped in tentacles. These show your hands wrapped in tentacles. So the thinking behind these blind is that they blind you. And furthermore, here's another system in the game. When a tile is on its little blue side like this, you can see some of them are red, some of them are blue. Over the course of the game, they will all flip to red, and red tiles are considered devoured. And that's important for a couple of reasons, mainly because, well, 2 things. The monsters only spawn on devoured tiles. That's what each of these is. It shows which of the spaces is the spawn point. Furthermore, almost every monster has a special power if it's standing on a devoured space. It either has a special power or its power is increased. Now, in this case of this blind, you'll note he's got line of sight to these 2 characters. If he weren't standing on a devoured tile, he would only blind, meaning apply this token here, this weakness token. He would only do that to one of the 2 characters. If, however, he is standing on a devoured tile, which he is, just like this guy, he will then weaken or blind all of the characters within his line of sight. So these guys are hugely annoying because they negate attacks. They force you to burn actions, getting rid of these weakness tokens when you would normally be attacking. And then finally, let's look at the hallucination. I've actually never played with these fellas yet. I do like these sculpts as well. It's kind of like a floating brain with tentacles coming. It's a weird alien, like elongated xenomorph head, though. It's got a scary mouth. What this guy does is, well, he's a hallucination. And the way that's expressed in gameplay terms is, if you recall these tokens here for being weakened and slowed, they can apply to monsters. And that simply means that instead of moving, a monster would discard its slowed token, and instead of attacking, a monster would discard its weakened token. This is a great tool for slowing these monsters down, for keeping them away from you, for stopping their attacks. One of the characters, a fellow named Christopher Dalton, who I don't have in this playthrough, and I'm missing him, his power is to hand these tokens out like candy to the different monsters. A hallucination, because it is presumably incorporeal or unreal or whatever, it cannot be affected by weakened or slowed. It's not physical. Furthermore, there's the ability to paralyze a monster, which puts it on its side, and then for its entire turn, all it does is stand up. It basically burns one of its turns. But hallucinations, because they are hallucinations, it's not physically present, they can't be paralyzed, slowed, or blinded. They furthermore, when you attack them, you roll this die, and the worst case scenario on this, it's only 2 of the 12 faces, is this tentacle result right here. Think of it as like a madness. It's only on 2 of the faces. If you attack a hallucination, the only one on the board is way up here, you then roll this die, and if you get a tentacle, the damage that you would have applied to the hallucination, you instead apply to yourself. Ouch. And so in this particular game, these are the 6 monsters that I've dealt. These are the 6 tactical considerations, like the weird effects that apply when I play the scenario this time. If I were to play it again, and I probably will because I think these folks here are about to get killed, which is a lost condition. But if I were to play again, I would deal 6 new monsters, and they would have 6 completely different effects on the game. I would still be playing the same scenario, which involves going to these 3 points to deactivate this unkillable boss here. But the specifics of what the monsters do would vary dramatically. And that is one of the reasons that I really like Deep Madness. So there we go. I guess we did get down in the weeds more than I expected, but that's hopefully, not hopefully, but depending on how this playthrough goes, there might be something else on the dining room table tomorrow. Join me. Let's find out. Everyone, stay healthy. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you tomorrow. Oh, shoot a monkey.